Madison Mills. Hello.
Hello, friend.
I
How are
am
you?
I am so good. I am so thrilled that you're here. For anyone that doesn't know, Maddie and I know each other from working at Bloomberg Television. One of my many jobs that I have is as a makeup artist, as we know, and I sometimes moonlight or daylight at the Bloomberg Television hair and makeup department. And Maddie, you're one of the very first people I met on my audition day.
Oh
Um,
my God, I'm honored.
Yes.
Absolutely
And
honored.
Madison was just like this ray of sunshine. It just made it so welcoming. And because it was intimidating, it was my first TV makeup job. So you made it so welcoming and wonderful. And I've just loved getting to know you over the past few months.
Oh my God, I feel the exact same way. And I also feel so much stress for people who come in and have to audition because you have to like do your job in front of other people. And I feel
Yes.
like that is the most stressful thing in the world. So I just have so much empathy for anyone who has
I
to go through that.
honestly had never experienced anything like it in my life. Whereas, like, you go into this room where, like, the jobs are already happening. Like, people are
Right.
getting their makeup done, and then you're in that room in front of everyone else doing someone's hair and make. Thank God they just pick a PA to like come in, so it's like they don't have to go on air. So if like you do a
Oh, I
terrible
didn't know
job,
that. Okay.
yes, like they would never like put an actual correspondent in the chair. I mean, can you imagine? Like, can you imagine?
I mean, I can because you would kill it and then they would
Well,
go on air and look amazing.
well, you're too sweet. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my God. Well, I'm so happy you're here. We are so excited to just chat with you about you and your life. You're one of my favorite people. You are my favorite person. I'll say it. You're my favorite person there. I look forward to seeing you
Tina,
every time I'm there.
I
I
feel the
mean
same
it.
way. It is such a joy and kind of an unpaid therapy session for you. Probably the majority of the time I get to be in your chair and you
It's
have
the
taught
best.
me so many amazing hair and makeup tricks
Oh,
among other bigger life lessons
oh my
as
God,
well.
thank you. Thank
Yes.
you. Okay, so Maddie, tell us like what got you into journalism? How did you get to where you are right now?
So I always was kind of obsessed with other people's stories. Like I was very curious my entire life. Uh, and I got really lucky because my mom was the first female news director in Florida. So I know it's crazy. So I kind of grew up with this incredible idol in my household who I could look to as an example of a powerful female journalist, right?
Hmm.
Um, and that combined with my extreme nosiness just kind of set me up perfectly to go into this. I like started a newspaper when I was in fifth grade and asked all of the like executives at our school about uniforms and how they were sexist.
I am dead. Wait, what was the name of the newspaper? Do you remember?
I think the school was like, our mascot was the lions, so I think it was like the Lion Times. Like it was not our best
I
work,
would have
Tina.
I would have died to be interviewed by fifth grade Maddie Mills.
I'm happy for you that you did not have that experience. But yeah, and then just from there, I was just obsessed with stories and getting to tell other people's stories and pass the mic around.
Oh,
Like what you're doing right now.
well, yes, yes. And we had a conversation in the makeup chair not too long ago about being creative and being in the arts. And this is an art form, what you do. It's not, a lot of people come to New York and they think I'm going to be on Broadway, I'm going to be a singer, I'm going to be an
Mhm.
actor. There are so many other ways to be creative, and we shared this love for interviews and meeting people and having these conversations and telling stories, which is very artistic and very creative and such a nice outlet for people like
Yeah.
us, you know?
Yeah, it's such a cool way, I think, to like remember that we all are part of this weird human condition, and like
Hmm.
we're all constantly going through hard things and then putting our mask on to the world. And when you do an interview, you get the opportunity to ask a question so good that it makes the person take their mask off and then you relate in such a beautiful way.
That is
So
such
I
a
feel like that's
beautiful way to phrase that. I'd never thought of it that way.
it's hard because you don't want to make it seem like you're kind of like trauma parachuting into people, you know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yeah, of course.
But at the same time it's like when we're all like vulnerable and share our stories, it helps other people see that and think, "Oh, that happened to me too," or whatever the case
Yes.
may be, right?
Totally. Totally. Okay, I want to get more back into like your interview style and what it's like being an actual correspondent, but what to go back kind of in your history of things.
Mhm.
Where did you go to school? What were your first few jobs before you got to Bloomberg?
Yeah, so I went to USC, and another thing that you and I share, Tina, is our love of the theater.
Yes.
Yes, and I got in for theater, and I was supposed to be like on that track. And then we've also talked about
Hmm.
this. Auditioning is like hell on earth to
Soul
me.
sucking. Yeah. Same. Same.
It's so, and like people who do that for a living are the most iconic people on the face of the earth to have the confidence to like deal with that all the time.
Mhm.
So once I got to school and realized that was the majority of the job, I was like, I gotta pivot, you know?
Yep.
Um, and I interned in the school newsroom my first semester, and I was just obsessed with it. I loved the adrenaline rush of breaking news. I loved, again, getting to like do interviews and tell people stories and be like, this is a student on campus who I feel like hasn't gotten heard, you know? And
Mhm.
I felt like that was just such a cool thing to get to do. So from there, I started doing as much journalism as I could. I also needed money in college, so I would pitch different outlets stories, and I ended up working full time for USA Today while I was in college. So that was really helpful to like jumpstart my
Mhm.
career, because when I graduated, I already had like a credit, you know?
Yeah, which is huge.
Yeah. So I was super blessed to have that opportunity. And then I got a job in New York, and I moved here the Monday after I graduated, and I've been here now, it's 6 years in the
Oh
city.
my
Um,
God. And you worked for some
yeah.
big places when you first moved to the city.
I started at the Times, which was again incredibly lucky. Like I can't emphasize that enough. I had a USC professor who knew the head of video at the Times and was just like, I'll connect you, you know? And that I so recognize how lucky I was to get like a spot in that room to get to pitch this guy on like why I should work there, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and I was also like, I think I was too young to be sort of embarrassed. I kind of walked in and told him all of the stuff I thought the Times was doing wrong with video, and then he hired me. And I don't think I would do that now as a strategy, you know. Um, but yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, I mean, it's so theatrical. What you're describing is very theatrical and very much based in like improvisation and thinking on your feet and having to have
Mm.
like this that adrenaline rush that you're speaking of and speaking and interacting in the moment is such a theatrical thing. So you having a background in theater, I think only makes you stand out. So I'm sure this is something that these employers saw in you, this brightness and this agility that you had to think on your feet.
Well, it's so interesting you say that, because just the other week when I was doing a show, like we lost the teleprompter, which happens all the time. And I was thinking of you because I had worked with you that day. And I was like, this is just like a show where your wig falls off or
Yeah.
whatever. And that's the best part, because then you have to just figure it out. And that's the part that's so fun, you know? I'm sure for
Yes.
you, when you're doing the podcast, it's like, this person isn't giving me the answers I want. What do I do? Or the Zoom fails or whatever, right?
There is something about thinking on your feet in the moment, like when I'm live on stage or even when something goes wrong in the podcast, which, it's again, it's theater or it's music or it's just
Mm.
life. Like it's nothing is that
Mhm.
serious. So for something like to go wrong, it's like it's not the end of the world and it's really fun and it's sweaty and it's exciting and it's yeah, and then you get off the Zoom or you get off the stage or you get off the set and you're like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted because you're
Yeah.
using every single facet of your brain and your body to like be present
Yeah.
for this thing. And not everybody can do that.
Yeah. That is so real. Like the first year that I anchored, every day after work, I was just like dead,
Have you built
completely
sort
dead.
of a stamina now? Do you have a stamina for that or do you still get just exhausted at the end of the week?
I think that now I'm so lucky to have the other anchors at Bloomberg who've like taught me tips and tricks for getting that stamina, you
Hmm.
know? And it's like anything, it's the reps, right? Like I'm sure with your solo show, when you go on a run where you do it every night,
Yes.
that
Yes.
helps, right?
Totally. Totally. That makes a lot of sense. But if you're doing it
Yeah.
more, you kind of get into a rhythm. So was there
Yeah.
anything that like you really had to study or work on? Because you are so naturally good at thinking on your feet and being bright and bubbly and
Yeah.
intelligent. What was there anything that really, or some sort of advice from your fellow anchors that was really
Mm.
helpful, that or things, feedback that you got that you needed to work on?
I think that the biggest thing at Bloomberg is that it's all sort of unscripted live TV, which is very different from a lot of other networks. So, typically if I would do a pre-recorded interview for most newsrooms, you would like book the interview. Let's say you'd have like 30 minutes with someone and then you'd edit that down, right?
Mhm.
At Bloomberg, it's not like that. You do a live interview with someone for 5 to 10 minutes. So every word really matters. And that was a big learning curve for me because I was used to kind of like, well, if I don't get them to say the soundbite that I need in the first couple questions, that's okay. I can get it out of them over the course of 30 minutes. Now I have to spend like pretty much the whole work day. What I'm focused on is drafting the questions in a way where like I'm looking up every interview that person has ever done to find out what their go-to talking points are. And maybe I can say something in the question like, hey, CEO, I know you're going to say that you can't talk about Amazon being your biggest competitor. I know you can't go there, but what's the single biggest thing you bring to the table that a company like an Amazon doesn't,
Mhm.
Um, like getting that specific and granular, even that we could make more specific,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, was the biggest learning curve for
Well,
sure.
and you make it look so easy because Alex and I, we've started interviewing these incredible women like yourself, and it
Yeah.
really is. I mean, we do a lot of research. We a part of our job is researching the person and creating an outline and looking at their talking points, and we actually,
Mm-hmm.
discussed with you a little bit our outline of questions, and we have an idea of what we want to talk about, but we also want it to look really natural and like it's a conversation and have a conversation. And I think that a lot of times we don't realize how much work goes into an interview. Everything
Yeah.
you're saying, it's just like, oh my god, yes, yes. So what are your tips for a great interview? I'm glad I'm asking this at the top of the interview, so hopefully I can implement it throughout the rest of
Oh
our
my God. No,
conversation.
you've already done it. And I admire what you and Alex do so much because in some ways I think I can learn from being more conversational and, jumping in with a personal anecdote from time to time. Like that's okay too,
Yeah, yeah.
It totally just depends on the format and the audience
Although
and
you've
all of
said
that.
before that there's a fine line of, sorry, we'll go back to that
Yeah.
question about tips, but there's a fine line of, as an anchor, you can't really get into your personal opinions, right? Because like here we can speak
Yes.
freely, we can say whatever we want, we can whatever. But what is it like working within that structure, and what can you explain a little bit more for our listeners what that means for you?
Totally. So I have had to work really hard on not oversharing any personal beliefs I might have about a given story. And that's a struggle for me for sure, um, especially because, it's our generation. Like we're constantly sharing how we feel about every news event on our Instagram stories every
Mhm.
single day, and so my co-anchor told me this when I started, and I thought it was such good advice. She was like, you can't pretend to be somebody else when you're live for 2 hours. If you're only on TV for 2 minutes, maybe you can, but if it's 2 hours, you're going to reveal your true self over time.
Mhm.
And figuring out how to be me but not say something that would alienate some viewers or just like not be ethical journalistically, has been a tightrope for me to walk. And I've kind of I still have a lot of work to do on that, but the way that I've tried to improve is by just being as prepped as I can be with data and facts on those stories that I am really emotionally impacted by, like I've got my go-to stats on abortion. I've got my go-to stats on gerrymandering in the US, and that way, when that part of my brain that wants to say something about a topic goes off during a live show, I can go back to the data and that's a safe space.
That's actually like a really good thing just for in life. Like always go back to the facts. Always go back to the facts, and it kind of brings you back to the root of the issue or the root of the whatever you're discussing. I mean, that
Yeah.
has to be so hard because you're a TV personality. And I know when I watch the news and when I'm watching Bloomberg or the Today Show and I'm seeing these people, I
Mm.
feel like I know them and they're my friends
Yeah.
and they're in my home. But you're right. There's not a lot of room for self-expression.
Totally. And I'll do a lot of talking about like my poor boyfriend. I like constantly am just airing out any issue that we have live. Um, because that's a safe area to plan, where I can joke about living in a fifth floor walk up, things like that. I'll always work in to be a little bit more relatable, especially anytime I interview like a CEO of a Shopify or any company that's related to online shopping. I'm like, I have an addiction to online shopping. And then that's where we start the interview,
Because that's a fact and you're allowed to say that, right? Because it's
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. As
and
long
not
as
an
it's
opinion.
true. Right. Exactly.
That's amazing. Okay, so
Yes.
who's one of your favorite people? I mean, I read before you hopped on here a list of amazing people that you've interviewed. The vice president, Deepak Chopra. Who's your favorite person that you've ever interviewed?
I have to say it's not like any of the names, my favorite story I've ever done is this documentary I did when I worked at New York Mag about a group of high school students from Parkland, which is the high school where there was a shooting on Valentine's Day in, I want to say 2018. And I interviewed 4 girls who worked on the yearbook staff, and they totally threw out their yearbook and redid it to dedicate the book to the students who had been killed that day. And I still keep in touch with those girls. I helped them write their college essays for their, college applications.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, those are the ones that like stick with you way more than
Right.
the kind of gets, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally, totally. I mean, we've had some great, amazing. I mean, all of our interviews have just been wonderful because we only have people that we absolutely are obsessed with. But
Yeah.
we've had some surprising guests too, where we don't really anticipate, loving them as we already love them, but then we're like, oh my god, wait, no, but you're awesome. This is so cool and
Totally.
relatable.
Yes.
To get back to you and you as a person. You're a public person. You're on TikTok. You're doing lives. You're working for Bloomberg Quicktake. Your
Mhm.
face is out there.
Mm.
Have you dealt with any scrutiny of your looks, your hair, the way your makeup is on? I mean, hopefully not your makeup because I'm
Never the makeup on days when Tina works with me. Never.
But in the public, I mean, not necessarily from like your bosses or anything, but from the public and in comments, have you dealt with any scrutiny in that sense?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I feel like you can't be a woman on video and not get just constant
Yeah.
visual feedback, And what's so funny is that so much of the time it's like, one thing I've gotten as a recurring sort of feedback is that I'm a good weight because I'm not skinny enough to be intimidating to viewers, but I'm not big enough to be like unattractive, And that has come up a lot. Um
Like more than once that has come
more
up?
than once. Yeah, more than once.
Whoa.
Um but I mean, this is like women who are on TV deal with so much worse than that all the time. I mean, it's gotten so much better in so many ways. Like when I talk to the anchors at Bloomberg who've been doing this for decades, the
Mm-hmm.
stories they tell me, I'm like, I would have been out.
Yeah.
I could have never dealt with that. So it's gotten so much better, but there's so much left
How
to
do
improve
you
on.
deal with that mentally, and how do you protect yourself from, I mean, falling down a rabbit hole of deep despair and self-sabotage?
Right? I know. I mean, do
Because
you
I
have
mean,
any advice?
you're like,
What
well,
would
I
you
don't
tell
know.
me?
I'm currently spiraling as we speak. Everything's terrible.
I mean, I'm a big therapy girl. I love
Yes.
therapy.
We love therapy
Um,
here.
we love therapy, and I just remember that like I have a really good group chat of other journalists who went to USC with me, and we're all constantly like pasting in a comment from someone on Twitter who said something about us, and just reminding ourselves that it's almost, it makes it feel like a robot at a certain point, because it's so copy paste the same feedback for every single one of us, that you just remember that that's not real life.
Yeah. My therapist always says to think of it like any kind of scrutiny or any issue as like a little text bubble in like the world of your life, and be like, okay, it's like a little text bubble. Like how much does that affect my whole life, my whole picture? If it's just like this one little thing happening up here, that's one person's opinion or one person's thought, and it's like, oh, it doesn't really affect me that much. Okay, goodbye.
I love that so much. Right. Like it's a
You know?
text bubble. I'm just going
Exactly.
to simply turn the
Like,
page.
okay, yeah, bye. I mean, we know that as a news anchor, you've got crazy hours. You work all the time because the news stops for no one. The news is
Yes,
24
Tina.
hours a day. What can you take us through a day in your life?
Hopefully it's a day where I get to see you,
Oh,
ideally.
always.
Um, but I'm really lucky that I'm in the evening, so my day is so much easier than most anchors. I wake up at like 8. I immediately check Twitter, so I'm sure that's great for my mental health.
Hmm.
And I kind of start drafting out a list of top stories of the day, and then I email those to kind of the production team. So my co-anchor, my executive producer, and our senior producers. And then we go into the office. We have a meeting, just us, that core group, around 10 to go over all the stories. My executive producer will have his own ideas about what he wants to cover. My co-anchor will have stories she wants to cover, and we decide what the hour-long show is going to look like and which stories are going to make the cut. And then we decide which guests we want to have on for each of those stories that day. So typically it's like 6 guests for the show. So we then go out and book for the next hour. And then at 11 a.m., we pitch the show to like the higher ups at Bloomberg and make sure that they like the show. And then I go to hair and makeup and hopefully get to sit with Tina. And then you're just prepping for the show all day. And then at 5 o'clock, you do it.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm so glad that you went through that because I actually didn't know what your schedule was. And I'm always so curious. Like, are you just kind of like constantly prepping to have, but no, it's like every day is a new show and it's all
Yeah,
in one day, one day's time.
totally. And sometimes, like there are like abortion is going to be a story for a long time, right? So we're always kind of source building and like having phone calls with providers, and building those relationships for a special episode or whatever. But a lot of it is also like crash and burn day of just getting
Wow.
stuff on the air whatever you
And
can.
you're working from the moment you wake up until the end of your show.
Yes, but what's amazing about it is this is a job where you can't have homework because the show
Right.
ends at 6, and like you don't know what the news is going to be until the next day.
Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah, so it's not like you can be like, I'll just get to this later. It's like, nope, you wake up and
Yeah.
it's like that's when it starts.
Yeah. And I'm a huge
Wow.
procrastinator, so this is like excellent. I know you're a Sagittarius, so
Yes,
like
yes.
yeah, yeah.
Oh my
So it's
God.
impossible. So I need like a fire deadline, or else I'll never do anything
Me
in
too.
my life.
Alex actually teases me sometimes. She's like, nothing like wait until the last minute. I'm like, that's me because she's like so on it and like so she gets things done so quickly and ahead of time. And I'm like, I'm just gonna wait until the last possible minute that I could
Yeah.
maybe kind of squeeze this in because I don't know if it's the adrenaline. Is it the adrenaline that we love?
I feel like for me, because I'm a Pisces, so everything is like an emotional undertone. I feel like for me, I'm like doubting my ability to do it. And then at the last second, I'm like, well, now I just have to fucking do it. So then I
That
finally,
actually really resonates. Yes, where it's
yeah,
like total imposter syndrome up until the last minute when it's like you have no other choice.
right. You got to let it go and just
Cool.
do it because,
Cool.
yeah.
Wow.
What's Alex's sign? Do you mind me asking?
She's also a Sagittarius.
Oh,
Yes, but
interesting. But she's,
I'm Sagittarius Scorpio cusp. I'm the first day of Sagittarius, and then she's December,
interesting.
beginning of December. So she's Sagittarius, like she's right in the thick of Sagittarius.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I know.
Okay. But
It's very
she's
interesting.
more like type A.
Yeah, for sure, for
Okay.
sure. And we I mean, we really do balance each other out great. But like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised that this whole Zoom hasn't just like exploded without her, because I'm the one that just kind of flies in at the last minute, and I'm like
Yeah.
sitting down. I'm always late and like putting my lipstick on, and Alex prepares
No,
all the things.
literally, like the second before this, I was like, oh,
Cool.
let me throw away all my laundry in the background. Yeah, yeah,
Cool. Great. Great.
yeah.
Yeah, I like literally have to take off my sweater because I'm sweating, but I love
Burning
it.
up.
Yes, but I'm loving this. Um, okay, Mady, what has been? I want to go back to your career. Always back to your amazing career. Can you give us a rose and a thorn?
I do feel like I'm so privileged to get to do this job because of the stuff that I just like get to do is
Hmm.
so fun, you know? Like
Yes.
when I was at New York Mag, I did a video series where I just tried different jobs and I got a private audition for a Broadway show. Like
Wait,
that's crazy, you
what?
know?
Which
I
show?
auditioned the Beautiful, the Carole King musical.
That is like my
Oh
dream
my God,
show.
how have I not told you this? Because you are perfect for that
I
role.
am dying.
I should have
Wait,
proactively known you existed and brought you with me to shoot that video.
damn it. Okay, wait, is this
I
video
know.
in existence? I need to see this.
It's in existence. I mean, it was not, my finest journalistic hour, but it was more of an entertainment series. But that stuff is cool, and like
Yes.
I get to email Dr. Fauci and be like, I don't understand what's going on with the booster strategy in the US. Can you explain this to me? I don't take that lightly. The like ability to get to ask those questions is just so I really love that. Yeah.
That's amazing. What's the hardest part of your job? What are some challenges?
It's hard to not see senior women at the top of a lot of the big newsrooms in the US. That's still a challenge. Again, just based on like my group chat with my six best female friends in this industry, we all deal with issues of bias against women in newsrooms. Harassment in newsrooms is something that a lot of my friends and I have dealt with. Like those issues are still totally there. And I think this industry, because I guess it kind of aligns with theater in a way, like the hours are crazy. There's a lot of like post show drinking,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's based on like talent and casting in a lot of ways. So all of those power dynamics can sometimes make for a toxic
Yeah,
vibe.
because you have very big creative personalities.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it can be very dramatic, I would assume.
Yeah. And you're pitching yourself to be, like when you apply for a job, you are applying as like you being the person who delivers the news. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it's so personal.
you're the CEO, like you're the face of your own company. Like it's all you out there.
And that's also like beyond that, you said imposter syndrome earlier. Like I've so dealt with that. And every time I do a panel for college students or whatever, they always ask me about that. And I'm always like, yep, I still got it. Like I don't pretend to have like answered that question for
Right.
myself at all.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
So in that sort of same vein of like being a woman in the workplace and things,
Hmm.
yes, things have progressed a lot. Great.
Hmm.
But we're not quite there yet. The woman in the workplace is still not making the same amount as a man in the same job. Alex and I talk about this a lot on the podcast. We're both freelancers, we're artists, we're constantly having to negotiate for ourselves, which is my least favorite thing to do. What are
Yeah.
some tips, or what can you tell us about salary negotiations, advocating for yourself in the workplace, and being a woman in a male dominated industry?
Yeah. So for salary specifically, the biggest thing that I think we can do is, as hard as it is in the moment, get the other person to say the number first, no matter what, because you don't know what their band is for what they're willing to pay until you hear it from them, right? So in a more corporate setting, right, if you go to HR and they're like, yeah, so what are you thinking for your salary requirement, you might say back to them, I'd love to get an understanding from you about what the salary band for this position looks like,
Very good.
and how that relates to my experience before we continue the conversation, and that's totally fine to like put it back on them, because Another thing I always think about is if you say your number, like let's say you got offered 100K for, a job, or you said to a recruiter, 100K would feel right to me. And they say, great, that sounds good. Then you know that you messed up, because if
Yeah.
they're happy about it and say yes right away, you could have gotten
More.
maybe 20K more, Do you feel like that's something that freelancers would be able to do? Like, are you able to say to clients who reach out to you, well, what's your budget for makeup for this shoot?
Yes, there is definitely that. More often than not, folks are reaching out saying, we've got a very small budget. This is what we can offer you. Or what's the lowest you can go? Or sometimes people just say, what are your rates? And I
Mm-hmm.
give my rates, and it's about 50-50. Some people say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I've heard in the industry. Got it. Other people say, those are too high for me. I can't do that. And then I have the occasional person that's like, could you do it for less? And my answer used to be, well, yeah, let me see if I can work something out. And now my answer is no, because you wouldn't walk into a hair salon and ask the hairstylist after she's just done your hair if she could give you a cheaper haircut. Do you know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't
Yes.
negotiate with a corporation. You wouldn't negotiate with anyone else. So why do we feel like we can negotiate with freelancers?
Yes, that is so true. And it's also like, then maybe you can't seek out this service, unfortunately, if you can't pay the person the value that they are worth.
Exactly. Yes.
Like maybe you have to do your own makeup for the shoot, you
Yeah.
know?
Yes,
And that's
absolutely.
that's that. I feel like also for you, what I can imagine would be so hard is that you have to give yourself a raise. Inflation, which is such an annoying word, is about 7 to 8%. So ideally your rates would also go up 7 to 8%, which must, I can like, that would make me so uncomfortable to have to do that myself. So I like can't imagine having to go through that,
Well,
Tina.
I saw this meme or this thing or this whatever TikTok or something that it was like, okay, inflation has gone up 7 to 8%. So
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't raised your rates or your boss hasn't given you a 7 to 8% increase in your pay, you've then taken a pay decrease.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's say, typically, let's say you get like a 3% raise, you've still gotten a pay cut year over year because everything is so expensive,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's really hard. I mean, one thing that I've had friends of mine do if they have any expendable income is to get a financial advisor who will tell them, hey, you need to up your rates. And if that's what you need to like feel comfortable doing it, then I think it's worth that initial investment if that's something people have the funding to be able to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of investments,
Oh God.
you recently interviewed Sally Krawcheck. She's the CEO and founder of Elvest, which Alex uses and loves.
Oh, cool.
I've been with Edward Jones for years and years and years. My dad was a stockbroker, so I've always had my investments sort of taken care of. But Elvest is such an amazing, approachable way to invest.
Yeah.
And from that interview or from what you've learned, like how can we as women especially get the most out of our investments, and what are some key takeaways from that interview with Sally?
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, she is an absolute icon. We talked to her because she raised $51 million for LFS, which is just an insane amount of money. What I loved about that interview, she was someone who we got to be super honest, and she ended up telling us that the hardest people to pitch for funding are women, because some of the women who have that kind of capital, millions of dollars, are like, listen, hun, I had to work so hard to get to a place where I have money, and it's too big of a risk to bet it on another woman right now. It's too big of a risk. I had a feeling that was a thing in funding, but I'd never heard someone at her caliber, at her level. She has such a proven track record of success. I'd never had someone at that level tell me that, women still struggled to invest in her. So I thought that was sad and fascinating. In terms of investment advice for us, two of the biggest things that I've learned over the past, I'd say 6 months, in talking to people about dealing with inflation and investing, especially for women, and I'm sure that you have this on lock, Tina. for women, an IRA is the most important thing, an individual account, because if you, end up getting married someday, whatever, your 401k is always going to be subject to getting split down the middle if God forbid something happens. And your IRA is the only thing that you can count on being 100% for you. And it's also just a nice way to begin your journey in investing, because there's a limit on how much money you can put into an IRA annually. So you're not going to get like too crazy with it. There are so many services out there where you can put in what your investing goals look like. If you want to be aggressive, or if you rather, keep it really moderate in the beginning. Typically, the younger you are, the more aggressive you want to be, but that's a personal decision for everyone. And these services will give you recommendations. So you don't even necessarily have to be read in on exactly what ETFs to invest in or what stocks to invest in. You can kind of automate it if that's something that, if that's what's going to get people in the door, and especially women in the door of investing, then it's worth it to get an automated thing that just does it for you.
Absolutely. Because it can be really, really intimidating and overwhelming.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's crazy that, and I hope I don't sound like I'm kind of beating a dead horse with this repeated thing, but like, men just get told about this stuff from like other guys from such a young age. Even my brother is an incredible crypto investor, and he just like, friends' dads would like tell him about that, and that nobody's friends' dads told me to invest in an IRA. You know what I mean? Like that so didn't happen. Like I happened to interview people who told me to do it. So then I looked up how to do it. Right.
Yes. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have that in my DNA from growing up very young with living with an investment broker.
Sure. Yeah.
Everyone that I've talked to, so many people are, okay, I got to start an IRA. Which one do I do? How do I do it? How you explained it. We've had a few financial advisors on. I love how you explained that of the IRA, where it's just for you. It's the only thing that nobody can touch. It's just for you. It's a great way to start investing. It's really low pressure.
Yes. And just really important for any life events that may happen down the line that, we can't anticipate now. Like, and I don't want to just like presume that people listening to this plan on getting married or whatever, but like, if you do end up getting married in your life, like you really want to make sure you have that IRA, because it's the only investment account that can't get split down the middle if something, were to happen.
I'm not actually sure I even knew that. I don't even think I knew that. And I have an IRA.
I was shocked when we have this amazing expert who comes on our show all the time, Marsha Mantell, and we did like a 30-minute interview with her where we basically just talked about prenups. And she was like, the IRA, man, it's the only thing that they can't touch.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And you also have a TikTok that went pretty viral about the most important financial decision that you'll ever make. And it's getting married. It's picking who you're going to marry, right? Am I saying,
yes,
am I really watering it down? But why is that because of this exact thing?
You're absolutely describing it perfectly. Statistically, the most important financial decision you ever make is who you marry. It's not whether or not you go to college, which blew my mind. Yeah. It's not what job you get right out of college. It's not, people like to say that the most important raises you get in your life are from your 20s to 30s. Based on just the data, who you marry is way more important than all those things. Or I should say, who you tie your financial future with. And so, yeah, just like having those conversations with your partner as early as possible about everything, I think is so important, because that doesn't have to mean that you marry for money at all, right. But I think it's helpful if from the beginning you guys say to each other, how are we going to handle dinners? How are we going to handle travel together? You make more money than me. If you want to go on all these trips, are we going to split it 50-50? Or we get, just making sure that you and your partner feel comfortable talking about all of that is key.
It's huge. I mean, we've heard about it for years and years, that money is the main a big issue with a lot of relationships. I mean, I am single as can be, like just chronically single. I'm like, so I've heard that like a really big issue with marriages falling apart is it like I know.
Yeah, but you're
LOL.
an iconic queen and you already have your IRA. So you like
You know
are
what?
already
Yeah,
set up to like not be negatively impacted
that's true. So
financially by a partner.
I
Yeah.
am open and ready for whatever comes my way. Before I let you go, I want to ask you a few sort of rapid fire questions and just give me like the first thing that comes to mind when I ask you these.
Oh my God. Can't wait.
I know, no
Yes.
pressure, no pressure. Okay, what's your favorite thing or what's the best thing that you're either reading or watching right now?
The First Lady on Showtime. It's amazing.
Oh my God,
It's amazing.
I've heard it's great. I need to watch it.
It like gave me hope.
What is your current nighttime moisturizer?
It's the CeraVe lotion, like the
Yes.
most basic, the PM lotion.
It's the best though. Like it gets the job done.
I'm so relieved to hear you say that because I was like, this is so embarrassing that I'm
Not
still
even a little
using
bit.
this
Not even a little bit.
CVS thing. But
No,
yeah,
drugstore stuff is great, especially like CeraVe. I use CeraVe. I use their eye cream.
yeah,
I use their face wash. I love the face wash. What's your go-to cocktail?
a dirty martini, a dirty, filthy, dirty vodka martini.
Okay,
Yeah,
see, that's me and
yeah.
Alex too. We love it. Oh, I like a gin martini if I'm really feeling frisky. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Probably that rejection is redirection. I really like thinking of that phrase because I
Yeah.
mean, so often we think that the hardest moments in our careers are a
Hmm.
game over thing, and then they end up being the thing that got you, your dream
Yeah.
in the end. Yeah.
Who's a news anchor that has really inspired you?
I mean, I'm truly so obsessed with my co-anchor, Scarlett Fu.
I'm
She's
obsessed with her too.
she's so incredible. Like, follow her on everything. She's on TikTok, she's on Twitter. A more like broad example is Hoda. I'm obsessed with Hoda. I'm obsessed with Hoda. Like,
Yes.
I love everything about her. Every time she talks about her personal life, I just think she does it with such grace and confidence. And she's one who I feel like has mastered the like best friend, but still smarter than me anchor vibe.
Totally. I
Yeah.
completely agree.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think you meet somebody that doesn't like her. Like, I don't, you know what
No.
I mean? Like, she's like a Dolly Parton
Yeah.
of the news world. It's like, no matter
Absolutely.
where you stand, it's like, you can't not like Hoda. Maddie, where can we find you? Where can we watch you?
So I'm on TikTok at Mady Mills. I'm at Twitter at Madison Mills 22. I'm on Instagram at Mady Mills. And if you want to watch Bloomberg Quicktake, you can go to bloomberg.com/QT/live and see all of our live shows. Yeah.
You seriously don't want to miss it, especially Maddie and Scarlett together. It's just like a dream team. Maddie is so fun to watch. It's just been a damn delight having you on today.
Thanks, Tina. This was so fun. Thank you for letting me do this. This was really great. Thank
Oh
you so
my
much
God,
for
thank
you
you.
asked amazing questions, by
Oh
the
my God.
way.
Okay, Dad, you okay?
Yes. 12 out of 1. Yes.
Amazing. Oh my God, the bar was low. Okay, so
Yeah.
how do you sign off Quick Take? I don't actually know how do you end the show?
Oh my God. We usually just say, we do like, I'm Scarlett and I'm Madison Mills from New York. That's it.
Oh my God, amazing. Okay, so
Yes.
let's do that. Can you say I'm Madison Mills from New York and then I'm gonna do mine? Okay.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay. I'm Madison Mills from New York.
And I'm Tina Scariano from Obsessed with the Best.